On the first night in my inherited townhouse, the landline rang from inside the walls. I know that sounds impossible. It sounded impossible to me too, standing in the middle of a dark hallway with a moving box in my arms, listening to the ring vibrate through plaster and old wood like the house had a pulse. The phone was still packed away in a kitchen drawer. The house should have been silent except for the fog pressing itself against the windows and the pipes ticking in the walls. But it rang again, deeper this time, not from any room at all, from within the structure. Then my answering machine clicked on by itself. A woman's voice came through, low and scratchy with age, and began reading aloud the last thing I had written in my journal an hour earlier. "I've never liked houses that keep their own weather," it said in my exact words. I dropped the box. Mugs shattered across the floor. The voice kept going, following my handwriting sentence for sentence, including the half-finished line I had not yet written when I first set the journal down. That was the moment I understood I had inherited more than a house. I had inherited a record. My great-aunt Alina died in October, alone in a hospital on the other side of the country. I had not seen her in years. She left me the townhouse because no one else wanted it. The place sat in a narrow coastal city where every street smelled faintly of salt, mildew, and old money rotting behind fresh paint. The building itself leaned between two others like a guilty witness. 4 stories, narrow stairs, cracked plaster, decorative moldings that looked too delicate to survive the century they'd already outlived. The lawyer said Alina had been protective of the property. That was a polite word. The file of maintenance records he handed me was 3 inches thick and full of repeated repairs. Rewired in 1978. Line replaced in 1989, new junction installed in 1997, service notes redacted, attic access sealed, basement conduit inspected, floor plan unavailable. No floor plan. For townhouse that old, that was not normal. The first few hours I spent unloading boxes, I kept telling myself the ring had been some electrical fault. Buildings did strange things when they were old and wet. The city was full of them. By midnight, I had the lights on in most of the first floor and was trying to make peace with the stale, enclosed smell of the place. That was when I found the phone. It was hidden behind the baseboard in the front parlor, shoved into a cavity that had clearly been cut and repaired more than once. The cable ran backward into the wall. It was dusty, yellowed, and still active. When I lifted the receiver, I heard a faint line hiss and then a recorded message in a thin, wavering voice. Maintenance note, 11:14 p.m. The new occupant will hear the call before they find the source. Do not answer if it rings from the stairwell. I stared at the receiver until my hand began to shake. The voice on the tape had my cadence, my pronunciation not similar, mine. I hung up, then immediately dialed my cell phone with fingers gone numb. The landline rang at once, right behind the wall. I let it ring until it stopped. When I checked my phone, I had one new voicemail from an unknown number. It was the same voice again, but this time it was clear, current, almost cheerful in its precision. Maintenance note, 11:17 p.m. You will be tempted to tell yourself this is a prank. At 11:19, the glass in the front window will crack from top to bottom. Do not look outside when it happens. I actually laughed, a sharp, nervous sound. Then I looked at the digital clock on the microwave and watched the numbers change. 11:18. I should say something sensible here, something about stress or exhaustion or the weirdness of inheriting a house in a city that never quite dried out. But at 11:19, a sound like a rifle shot split the front room. The window cracked exactly as promised. I did not look outside. I stood frozen in the kitchen, breathing through my mouth, while something moved across the other side of the glass. Not a person, not properly. A shape passing through the fog so close it erased the street lamp for a second and then was gone. The next morning I drove to the city records office with the voicemail saved on my phone and the shaking suspicion that the file on my aunt's house was incomplete by design. The clerk brought me a folder with the original architectural survey, or what remained of it. Whole sections had been removed. Missing pages left jagged edges where someone had physically cut them out. The remaining plan showed the expected rooms front to back, but in the margins there were handwritten notations and a slanted script that looked uncomfortably like my own. Line rerouted, occupancy test failed, do not map east wall. I asked who had written them. The clerk just frowned and said those notes were already there when the archive was transferred. Transferred from where? I asked. She checked the screen, then looked up with an expression I can only describe as careful. From the hospital annex on Briar Street, she said. I knew that hospital. It had been closed for years. Back at the townhouse, I started searching properly. Behind the baseboards in the parlor, I found a narrow conduit opening, then another in the hall, and another in the dining room. Each one held sections of old phone cable wrapped in cloth tape and threaded through the walls in a pattern that made no architectural sense. Not a normal line, not even one line. It was a network. The wire split and doubled back through the house, disappearing into sealed spaces behind fireplaces, under stairs, inside a closet that led nowhere. I found maintenance notes tucked into the insulation, dozens of them, all in my handwriting. Some were simple. 11/4. 2:08 a.m. Tenant in unit below reports tapping. There is no unit below. 11/7 4:12 p.m. Do not use the sink after dark. 11/9 1:33 a.m. Front door opens inward. It should open outward. A few were stranger. 11/10, 10:44 p.m. The upstairs hallway is one room longer than it appears. 11/12, 3:01 a.m. You will hear yourself speaking in the crawl space. Do not answer. I did not remember writing any of them, but the pen pressure matched mine. The loops in the letters matched the notes in my old journals from college. The more I read, the worse it became. The handwriting did not just resemble mine, it was mine, stripped of any memory of writing it. By the third day I stopped sleeping. The voicemails continued. Each one came a few minutes before something happened. A burst pipe in the basement, a missing key that turned up in my coat pocket wet with seawater, a knock from inside the pantry when I was alone upstairs. The messages always gave me a time stamp, as if the house were logging itself through me, and always there was that final line, "Do not look at the wall when it remembers you." I began to think the house was wired with some hidden system, a private intercom network built decades ago by whoever had lived there. Yet every electrician I called either never returned or arrived once, took one look at the wiring, and left with the kind of pale face people wear after seeing a body. The third electrician, a woman named Mara, stayed long enough to tell me something I still do not understand. She traced the line with a tester, standing in the hall with her brows drawn tight. "This isn't ordinary copper," she said. "It's running through places it shouldn't be able to run through." "Like what?" I asked. She hesitated, "Like hollow spaces that aren't in the plan." Then she looked toward the second floor and went silent. "What is it?" I said. She swallowed hard. "There's a room up there that your floor plan doesn't show." I had already found the door. It was hidden behind a wardrobe in the upstairs landing, painted to match the wall. Inside was a small room with no windows, lined floor to ceiling with telephone cable, maps, and index cards, not maps of the city. Maps of the house, different versions of it. Floor plans overlaid and revised until the hallway became too long, the stairs changed direction, the back room appeared where the chimney should be, and a whole section of the building seemed folded in on itself like paper. On the center table sat a stack of journals, mine, or what I thought were mine, same black covers, same handwriting, same dates, stretching back years before I had ever seen the townhouse. I opened the first one and found notes about childhood injuries I did not remember, addresses I had never lived at, names of people I had never met, and repeated references to maintenance as though my life itself were a building under repair. Then I found an entry dated 6 months before I inherited the house. "If you are reading this, the transfer has worked. You will think Alina left you the townhouse. She did not. She returned it to the line." I sat down because my knees stopped working. The next pages were worse. There were photographs stapled into the journals, me at different ages. Some I recognized, some I did not. In one I was standing outside Briar Street Hospital in a hospital gown, staring at the camera as though someone had just called my name from far away. In another I was in the same hidden room, only younger, writing into a notebook while a man in a maintenance uniform watched from the doorway. At the bottom of the page was a line in my handwriting. "He says I will forget if the mapping is incomplete." I don't know how long I stayed in that room. Long enough for the fog to turn the windows gray. Long enough for the phone downstairs to ring again and again. Long enough to hear footsteps moving through the walls in a route that matched the hidden wiring exactly. Stopping at the room's door before drifting away, when I finally forced myself to go downstairs, the answering machine was blinking. One new voicemail. I played it. The voice was mine, but calm in a way I have never been calm in my life. Maintenance note, 6:40 p.m. The occupant has reached the original junction. If you are hearing this, do not assume the house is the structure. The house is only the interface. The line was installed to preserve identity across transfers. The notes are not predictions. They are instructions being delivered backward. You are not listening from the house. You are listening from the body assigned to it. I sat perfectly still. Outside, fog moved along the windows in thick, slow sheets. The voicemail continued. "Do not panic. Panic causes drift. The original occupant will attempt to reclaim coherence. If memory loss occurs, follow the maintenance sequence. If your handwriting appears where it should not, that means the circuit is active. If you find the room behind the room, do not speak your name aloud." There was a pause, a soft crackle as if someone had leaned too close to the microphone. Then the voice said the last thing I expected. "You asked for this, Alina." My stomach turned. Alina was my aunt. I had never been Alina. I went back to the journals, frantic now, and found the pages at the end torn out by hand. In their place, folded inside the back cover, was a hospital bracelet with my name on it, not my current name. A different one I had not used since childhood, if I had ever used it at all. There was also a key. I knew where it belonged before I touched it. The basement. The door at the bottom of the stairs had always been locked, but now the key fit perfectly. Behind it was not a basement exactly. It was a narrow service corridor running beneath the house, and somehow farther than the footprint above could allow. The wiring thickened there. Bundles of cable were stapled to the brick, disappearing through holes bored into the foundation. The air smelled of salt water and hot dust. At the far end sat a metal cabinet marked with peeling maintenance tags. Inside were cassette tapes, each labeled in my handwriting, each dated years apart. The newest tape had today's date. I found a player on the shelf beside it and pressed play. For a moment there was only static, then my own voice, younger and terrified, speaking so close to the microphone I could hear breath catching in the throat. If you are hearing this, then it worked, I said. A long silence followed, then very softly, the line is not in the house is in the line, and the line is in you. The tape clicked. After that came another voice, older, calm, almost tender. Do not let her remember the floor plan. I do not know who she was talking to. I know what happened next only because of the notes I found on the staircase the following morning. They were written in my own handwriting in fresh ink, still wet enough to blur when I touched them. At 2:13 a.m., the basement door will open from the wrong side. At 2:14 a.m., you will hear a second person breathing in the hall. At 2:15 a.m., you will realize the voice on the tape is not past tense. I did hear the breathing. I did hear the door unlatch. I did realize the tape was not old at all, and when I turned around, there was a woman standing at the top of the basement stairs wearing my face the way a house wears a stain, naturally, permanently, as if it had always been there. She smiled like she knew me better than I knew myself. Then the landline rang from inside the walls, and I understood the worst part of all. It wasn't calling to warn me. It was calling to check whether I was still the one it had mapped last.